Welcome to the Next ChaptHER Podcast. I'm Andrea Hecht, your host. I am a professional life coach, educator, and storyteller with Fully Informed Life. I'm joined here today with guest Allison Reff. Hi, Alli. I'm so excited that you are here today to share your story. The focus of this podcast is really to share stories of other women who have already gone on the journey of a life reimagined and sharing some of the trials and tribulations and lessons that they have learned along their journey and hopefully inspire other women that are ready to make a next step and write their own chapter.
Sounds amazing.
Thank you. Before we begin, I wanted to briefly introduce you, Alli. Alli and I had the pleasure of meeting through our daughters.
Yes.
Alli has two beautiful children and is the proud dog owner of 3 labs.
Oh, yes. We're a little crazy.
I'm sure. And the wife, and currently she is one of the owners of the Life by Alli and Paige. But that's not where her journey started. And so we are going to uncover where her journey started and what led her to where she is today. So before we begin, I want you to think, Alli, back to your childhood.
Okay.
And when you were a little girl, what did you dream of doing?
So, funny enough, when I was a little girl, I dreamed of being a mother. And I dreamed of being a young mother. And I will tell you why. My brother and my sister are both over a decade older than me. And I was by far the youngest, and my parents were much older. And I always thought about being a young mom. And that was something that was always very important to me, and I knew that I wanted to do. And I kind of went through, I thought I wanted to be a teacher. And at an early age, I said, I'm going to be a young mom, and I'm going to be a teacher. And that sounds right to me. It feels like I'm going to have vacations to spend with my family, good holidays, good benefits, weekends off. And that's what I did. I went to school for teaching, and I met my husband in college. And we got married. I was 25. I was pregnant with my first child at 26. And I went for my master's degrees. I got a dual master's in special ed and elementary ed, and that was it. That was the path I was taking, and I went for it. And that is where my journey began, and it's all taken quite a turn. But that was kind of the start.
Which is very interesting because when I asked you that question, I wasn't sure how that was going to line up. What we dream of as a little girl and where we start. And then sometimes what we dream of as a little girl doesn't really pan out until later in life. So that's really interesting how that's where your journey began. And so can you kind of explain a little bit more about your teaching and the beginning of your journey?
Absolutely. So, and it's interesting that you say we're always, in my opinion, we're always changing, we're always evolving. And listen, some women, some people might have those dreams and fulfill those dreams, and it's amazing. And that may be their dream and remain their dream. And for me, what I've really learned throughout everything is that you're constantly changing, and you don't have to have it all figured out at college graduation or when you have your first child or at 40. You have the right to change paths, change dreams, change aspirations, and you're never too old to do that. And I think that at a younger age, I didn't appreciate that or really recognize that. So I felt very pressured. Really, I wouldn't even say from the outside. It was more just within me. Okay, pick your career, know what you're doing, pick your major, pick your path. And so I did. And I liked teaching. I don't think I ever loved it. I don't think I ever woke up in the morning and was like, this is just my calling and I'm like obsessed with it and this is, but I woke up excited to go to work. I liked it. It checked all the boxes for that point for me. And then when I had my children, so I had Mackenzie and then I had my little guy, Preston, and I was a stay-at-home mom for quite some time. And the thought of going back to a classroom did not appeal to me. And I knew I wanted to go back to work eventually, but I also knew that that probably wasn't what it was that I wanted to do. So I ended up volunteering and saying, so I had my daughter, I had my son, and then probably about 5 years into motherhood, I was like, you know what? I've got to start exploring. If I don't want to do that, what do I want to do? And that question mark seems a little scary, I think, at first to a lot of people, especially when you're older and you're a parent and and I was like, oh, am I allowed to do this?
I like how you asked yourself, are you allowed to do that?
Yeah.
That's like a really interesting comment.
Right. Because
you are allowed.
Yes, and you are allowed, but I think that you have to give yourself that permission. And I started to explore, and I think you also, another thing that really was interesting to me through this journey of sort of changing career paths and was, I think you also need to give your loved ones, your husband, your children, the opportunity to rise to the occasion. So I felt nervous. Am I allowed to do this for myself? But will my family be able to thrive and live their best lives if I'm working full time, if I'm exploring what I want to do now? Are they going to be able to, be as happy and it not really ruffle their feathers? And giving them this opportunity to rise to that occasion, you would be pleasantly surprised, I think. My husband was like, yeah, go for it. Totally. Like, we got this. He's changed his work schedule, his hours, his routine, as have my children. And I don't think I have to say, as I'm reflecting on it, there's been no negative about it. It's all actually been very positive. And I was nervous for this transition, but I gave them the opportunity to kind of rise to the occasion. I was like, wow, look at you guys. All right. I haven't given you enough credit. You can do this.
And what's interesting is that you had the support system, and you mentioned that you weren't giving them enough credit and you leaned in on your support system. But then I want to also point out something. Sometimes people don't give themselves enough credit.
It's true.
Also. So you need to have your support system, and I commend you for building in your support system and having your cheerleaders along the way, because it can be scary when you make a change.
Absolutely.
And building in, but also believing in yourself.
Absolutely.
And that's so where did you find that, I guess, inner strength to explore? You used, I think, the word explore other opportunities. So where did you find that inner strength?
I think that what I started to do was, it was baby steps. And again, I think to say that, oh, you wake up one day, and listen, it might happen this way for some people, but I would venture to say not for the majority. Like, I didn't wake up one day and say, I'm going to co-own a business in my town and start a lifestyle brand. I said, you know what? This was a journey, and I explored, and there was trial and error, and I think that actually was the most beautiful part of this whole thing, was really when I did say to myself, okay, yeah, we're allowed to do this. Let's do this. Let's see where this goes. And that entire journey that has led to where I am now, I think was really just freeing, and I learned so much. And how I started was I just started to volunteer a bit, and I did some fundraisers for my children's schools, and I chaired some of them and put these events together, and I was like, well, this is neat. I like this. I like to see this final product of something beautiful and something people are enjoying. So that kind of led me into thinking, okay, well, I did a few of these events, on a volunteer basis. So let me see if I can explore this a little bit more professionally. So part-time, I started to do a little bit of part-time event planning, and there was a local mother who started this amazing business, and she was gracious enough to allow me to come in and help on some of her events for her business, and I did that, and I loved the experience, and that kind of snowballed into doing a few freelance on my own events, and people would reach out, and I would do some local events and, parties, and I did a couple in the city, a couple in New Jersey, and I was like, this is fun. I really like this. Again, I wasn't sure that this was it. This wasn't this is what I want to do but I was like, this is more on the right path here. And I, networked and started to figure, which part of this job really brings me joy. What am I really excited to do about this? And kind of saw what that might look like in the future in, more of my quote unquote forever career path, which
I like how you use the quote forever.
Yeah, because you know what? I'm a very big believer of people are always evolving and always changing. And you know what? This is awesome for right now, but in 10 years, there may be something else that in that time in my life is more awesome and what fits me now may not fit me in 10 years. And I think there's a lot of beauty in constantly being able to self-reflect and make changes, and not be afraid of these changes, because just like our kids are always growing, us as women, we're always growing in every stage of life. So who knows what, 10, 20 years from now will bring. But yeah, that was a little bit about what kind of led me in this direction.
Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate the fact that you strongly recognize that people do change, and the only constant is change.
100%.
I speaking just as I was getting ready for this interview, I was laughing because I'm drying my hair straight, and I used to wear my hair curly for 44 years. Like, I never straightened it. So, one day I woke up, I'm like, what I'm going to do is my hair straight. So, just from a personal point, yes, that people are constantly evolving, changing, and I think where some of the challenge lies is when you fight that change happens. Absolutely. No matter if you like it or not. So for you, I appreciate the fact that you've actually embraced it and recognize that there's some beauty that comes from it.
I totally agree with that. And I think that the fighting change and thinking that everyone needs to, have it all figured out or have one path and stick to it, I think that brings a lot of stress and, in my case, anxiety. I think once you embrace and accept that the change is inevitable, I think it really brings almost this joy to your life where you just appreciate the changes and you can really embrace it, and you can really just be comfortable in knowing that, you have permission from yourself and from your loved ones and just like the universe in general to change and to follow, whatever that might be and mean for you.
I love that. And before we get into your definition of joy, because I do want to talk about that, I wanted to step back for a minute. And as you were exploring, you mentioned that you started out volunteering. Yes. And so I ask around that, did you have any formal background, so to speak, in event planning?
I did not. I didn't.
Which is interesting. And I want to point that out, that a lot of people are afraid also to try something new because they feel that they have to have a certain skill set, a title or certificate, some kind of formal education. And the fact that you volunteered and you tested the waters and then it happened organically, can you kind of speak to that?
Absolutely. Yeah, I had absolutely no training. I was an educator by training. And I just, it appealed to me, and I think the one thing you have to have is, you have to be able to not be too proud, right? And you have to be able to say, hey, you know what? I don't have any formal training on this, and I'm going to make mistakes, and I want to learn. And so when I volunteered, I, was kind of winging it, but I had done things, for my own families and friends and children. And I had the confidence that I can execute this. And so I did that. I volunteered, and it went well. It was a great experience. And then when I reached out to, local companies that needed event planning, I said, I've done this volunteering work. I don't have the training. However, I want to learn. And I was okay with kind of starting at the bottom. I was okay with doing, calls and just finding out pricing and watching how it came together. And then the next event, participating more and more pulling it together. And then that led to kind of, running certain parts of the event. And then that led to me doing events on my own. And so it was something that took a bit of patience, and it took, me being able to say, hey, I don't know it all. Teach me. Because again, at that time when I was in my early 30s at that point, and I wanted to learn, and I was okay with that. And I did learn. I learned a tremendous amount. It was really invaluable. And I brought that with me.
And I appreciate, again, it goes back to the fact that you talk about change and the importance of embracing change, but also with change comes growth. Absolutely. And learning. And the fact that you were so interested in learning, and that that's part of the journey as well, and being vulnerable and saying, look, I don't know it all, but I'm willing to learn, says a lot too. And I think that that is, again, a huge lesson for people to understand that you don't have to have formal backgrounds. Like, get that out of your head. That's like your inner voice trying to stop you from doing something, thinking that you have to have that formal training. But quite frankly, you had skills from teaching that you were able to bring from one journey to the next. So
absolutely.
I guess let's spend a minute about that.
Yes, absolutely. And just from teaching, right. So having to be able to communicate with parents, speak in front of a class, advocate for your students. I mean, all of those different communication skills were something that I absolutely use right to this day. And so none of that felt wasteful to me, or I wasn't regretful of any of that. It actually helped me in my journey with my own children, and just having that background and being able to advocate for them and their needs. And so I think that that's another thing, is not saying, oh, well, but then that would be wasted, all that time or all that money or all that. No, you've got to take from your experiences the gems that you're going to carry with you in the future. And there are, in every situation, I think, good situations, difficult situations, all the good, the bad, everything in between. You can find the pieces of those experiences that you're going to carry with you that are going to help you grow, help you learn, and that you can use on your next chapter.
I love that. And that is something that I work on with my clients, is building. I like how you use the word gems. I kind of talked about it as someone's success formula, but maybe I'm going to coin that term, taking your gems and putting them in your, I call it a purse. I don't know if you call it a pocketbook, but putting it in your back pocket, so to speak. And that, again, I love that you mentioned that nothing is wasted. And that
absolutely
all that I always like to say too, that there is no mistake in life, that everything is,
I couldn't agree more.
Try something, that there's learning, and that you take those gems and that learning and bring it forward as you move on.
I totally agree. I think it's so important.
So now that we've shared a little bit about, the event planning and where you were in that aspect, I'd like to touch on, I know you mentioned about joy and happiness, and so I'm curious to hear what your definition is of joy and happiness, and how that has potentially evolved as you have gone from one chapter to the next.
It certainly has evolved. It certainly has evolved. I think that now joy and happiness to me means being able to wake up and feel excited for your day, being able to wake up and feel content and sort of happy in where you're going. And my joy and my happiness comes from my family, but it also comes from within now. And I think that as a new mother, you really put yourself right on the back burner for a while. Mm-hmm. And I think it takes time to realize that, yes, of course, the happiness of your family, your children, your spouse, it is all very important, right? Because it's all interconnected. But your happiness as well is so just vital to the working of that entire unit. And I just think that for me, now my happiness really comes from within, and that is something that has evolved and changed for me. When I was a younger mother and a new mother, I really focused much more on my children's happiness and less on me. And now I think that they're kind of, of course the kids always come first, but I do think that it's more of an equal playing field now. And I think my husband, myself, my son, and my daughter, all of our happiness really is equally weighed. And that has been something that has given me a lot of joy and has allowed me to really be able to wake up each day and go to sleep each night and just feel just content and happy with where I am.
I appreciate that, and the fact that also that you said that it evolves. I mean, I like to use kind of the car analogy. And when one tire is off, if mom is, she's the driver of the car, or maybe she's the passenger when dad or, spouse partner is driving. If one of the tires is off, the whole thing is a bumpy ride. Yes. And so it is so important that you take care of yourself, and that it is true. A lot of times mothers don't. And so to that point, can you kind of share a little bit about where you are now? And then I know in our conversation, we have spoken about mom guilt. So kind of how that played into where you are now and how you got there.
Absolutely. So mom guilt, it's so real. Right? It's so real, and it really just hits everyone, and it's different for everyone. Whether you're a stay-at-home mom or a single mom or a part-time working mom or full-time, it looks different for everyone, but I always, in one way, shape, or form, hear it from no matter who you are. Right. And I think at this point in my life, I kind of look at it where mom guilt is just not helpful, right? It's just not really productive individually or on like the larger scale of just as a society. It doesn't really help to feel mom guilt, although it is inevitable, right, at some point. So I think for me, being honest and having communication with my support systems of, my husband or my sister or, whoever that might be for you, or your friend, for me, once you're honest about the challenges and what you're feeling with the mom guilt, it moves you more towards a solution rather than kind of being stagnant and stuck in that mom guilt. You verbalizing it for me and communicating, saying, hey, these are my challenges. This is where I'm feeling stuck. This is where I feel like I'm lacking. Then it allowed me to say, okay, so now what? What's the next step? Let's make a plan. Let's make a solution and work towards that. So there was definitely a point where I said, okay, you know what? I feel kind of stuck now, where I'm not, I knew I didn't want to go back to teaching. I started to do the volunteering, and I started to say to myself, and give myself that permission and allowing my family that opportunity, like I said, to rise to the occasion and say, all right, guys, mom wants to work on mom now. Right.
And which is huge. And when you said that, how did that feel?
It felt great, because I'll tell you, as a mother to a daughter, as you can understand, I want to be able to give her that, that role model, that example of if you want to do something and you want to set your mind to it, well, you go ahead and you do it. And there will be the naysayers and there will be the people that say, oh, well, isn't that crazy? But all that matters at the end of the day is how you feel about the situation, how you feel tucking yourself in at night and going to bed, and what's going to make you feel good. And so giving her that example of saying, you know what, mom wants to do something, maybe it's a little scary and it's certainly different than we've been used to, but what do you say? You want to help me out on this? And I told my kids, like, I need your help. I'm not going to pick you up from school Monday through Friday anymore. Right. We're going to do a carpool, or we're going to have a babysitter, or maybe I will be able to pick you up, and then some other days dad's going to pick you up, and we are going to just kind of navigate this all together, and kind of making it fun was really something that worked for my family. We really looked at it as a very positive thing. And so what started to happen and after I was doing the events was I traveled a ton. And whenever I traveled, I would find just this joy and this peace and this serenity in certain aesthetics and certain environments. And to me, I thought, well, this would be great. My business partner and I said, let's bring all of this to life at in a boutique, in a store in our town. And we don't have to jump on a plane or a train or to go feel this or see this or smell this. Let's bring it here. And it's such a sanctuary and such a wonderful place. Just you walk in and I feel like all of your senses are kind of engaged and you see beautiful things and the textures and the smells and everything. So we ended up bringing that to life and calling it The Life by Alli and Paige, and opening this store in Westfield. And it's been such a wonderful journey. But leading up to that journey, was a lot of transition.
Yeah, for sure.
Yes, absolutely. And really just, I think for me, it was very liberating saying, hey, you know what, guys, I can't do this on my own. Mom is not going to be able to make this transition for you guys or for my husband. We had to do it as a team. I had to lean in on my support system. And I think they played off of my energy, and I think they were really happy for me. And I know my husband has been wildly supportive and great. And it's made all the difference, just having a great support system in place and people that are there saying, like, I think if you walk into it with confidence and you're like, I got this, I'm going to do this, I want to do this, everyone's like, all right, let's do this.
For sure. And I think, again, it goes back to the support system. I think it goes back to, I loved how you mentioned about being a role model for your daughter and saying, if I want to do something, that I can do this, I'm going to make it happen. Mm-hmm. Will there be some challenges along the way? Sure, but that's life. Will there be shifts in priorities and to make things work? Sure, but at the end of the day, like you mentioned, your happiness is going to feed off of and fuel the rest of the family. So unless you take care of yourself. And then the other thing that I thought was really interesting was you mentioned how when you were traveling and you saw these different places and you took an experience and the things that you were so aware of what was happening around you and what you enjoyed from those experiences, and listened to like your inner voice and said, okay, how can I then recreate this? Which I thought was really interesting, and having that sense of awareness, because a lot of people don't, or if they do, they kind of try to quiet that inner voice. So we have inner critics, but we also have some great inner voice that we should be listening to.
Totally. But yeah, I totally agree with you. I think that, again, that's something that I started to listen to a bit more later in life. And when I was away or down the street on a hike with my family or walking my dogs or, in wherever it was, Italy, France, Arizona, wherever I landed, I would really listen to and try and take in what was making me feel so zen and happy in that moment. And I think it's important to recreate it, whether it's a recipe of something that, ends up being nostalgic for you, and try and recreate that and bring that moment and that like yumminess home with you. Whether it is a scent or, something that you're smelling and you're like, oh, this is just it for me. I've got, find it. And I think that really being able to create these moments where you're feeling, your best, and you're feeling all this joy, and being able to sort of have that with you in your pocket for everyday life. I think it's wonderful, and it's really something that I have always tried to do, especially now. And I really think that was kind of a catalyst for, our boutique also, was, what makes you feel great? What makes us feel good? Well, let's bring that to life,
Yeah, for sure. And I can say I've been to the boutique, and it really is a magical place. And
thank you.
You also do events there, which is really exciting too. So again, going back to the fact that you have taken your gems, your tools, and have kind of sharpened them, so to speak, along the way, and have been able to use your different experiences to create the path where you are today. That's really
absolutely
exciting. So kind of as we're wrapping up the conversation, because I could talk to you all day, because I think this has really been very inspirational, and the fact that we touched on really your definition of joy, mom guilt, understanding that change is inevitable. What is one thing that you want the listeners to really walk away with? If there was one gem from this conversation, what would it be, so they can take that along with them and put it in their back pocket?
It's a good question, but I would say that the one gem I would like to leave listeners with would be that it's never too late to make a change. I think remembering that we are always changing, and we are always evolving, and we are always growing, and embracing that and saying to yourself, it's never too late to kind of switch gears, or just kind of maybe mold something into, it doesn't have to be completely new, but maybe just make a little change and make it a little different. I think that is something that has been really invaluable to me, to just accept, and it's allowed me to go down the paths that I've been going on, and it will allow me to go on other paths in my future.
And I appreciate that, because that is true, that people think, oh, you can't teach an old dog new tricks or something like that. That's ridiculous. Like, that
you sure can.
At any age, if you set your mind to it, you listen to yourself first, and then you get rid of those inner critics, and then lean into your support system. And look for help. And if you don't have an immediate support system, you lean into professionals. I mean, that's what we do in my coaching business, but that you 100% can do it if you choose to and you put your mind to it. So I really appreciate that. So on that note, I wanted to allow you to share if there are ways that people can connect with you to,
Sure.
If someone wants to continue the conversation with you, and hear more about your experience and have a conversation, if they are looking to overcome any of these obstacles.
Absolutely. So for my boutique, our Instagram handle is The Life by Alli and Paige. It's THELIFEBYALLIANDPAIGE. It's a mouthful, but The Life by Alli and Paige is the Instagram handle. You're welcome to follow us. You can reach out through DM. We check it frequently, and I would be happy to connect with anyone over that. Or you could stop by the boutique. I'm usually there at least morning or afternoon, one Tuesday through Saturday. You'll see one of us there, but you can feel free to DM, and I'm happy to chat with anyone further. And thank you so much for having me. I love being able to speak with you anytime, but I love being able to be on here and share a little bit of inspiration.
Well, I appreciate it because the goal of the podcast is really to inspire other women and to build a community and to normalize some of the thoughts and the feelings that people are having as they are trying to write their next chapters. So the last thing I will say to our listeners is wherever you are in your journey, hopefully you can take some gems from this conversation and think about where you would like to be tomorrow. You don't have to think about anything beyond tomorrow, but how would you like to write your next page for tomorrow? So thank you again for joining us on the Next Chapter podcast, and stay tuned for other inspirational conversations. Thank you.